Welcome back to the Core Combatives podcast. I'm Luigi Mondelli. I'm here with my mentor, my teacher, Shihan Walt Lysak. And today we will have a 4-block or 4 segments. I'm away from my home studio, so I'm traveling here in the mission. So that's why you see a different background. Quality of the image for who's watching us on YouTube not going to be that great, but as long as the audio is good, I think we're fine. So we're gonna go first with the first segment. Going to be the first and second items within the daily dozen for BJJ dominance, which is pretty much your work, your 12 things that it can help anybody getting ready for a competition, any type of competition in reality. And I think like you can get some lessons to even apply this in different other scenarios. We had a couple of great questions from people that we know related to self-protection, related to self-defense. So the plan is to cover the reality warrior principles. After that, we answer the questions because I think like those things are interconnected. And then we finish with the preparedness principles. And before we start, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, send us any comments and questions, and hit the notifications button too, because this way, wherever you're getting this podcast from, you can see as soon as we release a new episode. So you can stay updated. I think we are bringing a lot of great stuff. We're having a great feedback. So thanks so much, Shihan Walt, again, for your dedication and your time and sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you, Professor. Great to be here again, and I've really been enjoying this too. And I appreciate, all the people that have given us some positive feedback and comments and things like that, the questions, and we look forward to the upcoming sessions. So at this point, I guess I'll begin the BJJ Daily Dozen for Dominance. I'm just going to do a quick review. So when we first talked about this on our pilot episode, we kind of went through just the basic layout of how it works. Remember that there's 3 phases. We have the pre-phase, the present phase, and the post-phase. Pre-phase is what happens before the competition. Present phase is what happens at or during the competition. And the post-phase is what happens after the competition, because there's lots of things we can learn in each one of those, and lots of things we need to know for each one of those phases. The 12 elements, or the dozen, as we call them, the BJJ Daily Dozen for Dominance, involve the mental and emotional aspects of training and conditioning, preparation. One thing we call the coach connection. Another thing is called professional and practical matters. Another is called training partners and trainers. We talked about these. We gave a little overview of what each of these meant in the first session. We also talked about conditioning, warm-ups, training, workout plans, and journaling. We talked about nutrition and hydration. We talked about technicals and strategic development. We talked about rest and rehab. We talked about drills for skills. We talked about rolling and sparring. We talked about researching every aspect of the sport, as well as how to replicate the competition dynamic as much as possible. So those are basically the 12 elements. Today, we're going to go a little bit more in depth into a couple of the elements, which are the first 2. The first one would be the mental and emotional game, or the mental emotional aspects of competition. And really what this involves is developing a clarity about what you desire to do and why. Why are you even competing in the first place? Why does this interest you? Why have you decided to compete in jiu-jitsu? It's very important to know why you're doing something, and as well as managing the emotional dynamics, such as fear, anger, stress, your ego, frustration, and things like that. This involves also keeping yourself calm before the fight and saving so that you can save your very best for the actual match itself. This can involve visualizing yourself performing to the best of your ability, as well as creating an atmosphere of positivity in how you think and what you say. I always say be really careful not to spend too much time with what we call energy vampires, okay? These are people that are just negative about everything, right? You say you're going to compete, you say you're going to win, you say they're just going to be negative about everything, going to put you down, they're going to question, challenge why you even doing this, and so on and so forth. That is not something that's going to help your game. That is not something that's going to help your performance. Be very careful about allowing those type of people in your life, and be very clear that they know that that's not going to be acceptable with you if they're going to be around you. So they're going to have to either change that attitude or they're going to have to not be around you as much, or maybe even at all, if that's going to be the case. You also don't want to be around a bunch of yes people either, right? People that are just going to, always say yes to everything you say, never challenge you respectfully. They should, if they challenge you, but challenge you respectfully. And, hey, look, I care about you, and I'm just trying to do this to give you the best possible results you can get. But here's what I was thinking as opposed to what you were thinking. That's fine. It's okay to be challenged as long as people do it the right way, the respectful way, and in a way that shows genuine concern about you and the fact that you're as successful as possible in competition. Another aspect of the mental game is to determine in advance, like I said, why you're doing this. So if you're doing it for some sort of an ego stroke, this can lead to disaster or even a real crushing experience for you in competition. So, but if you love the challenge, you compete your hardest, you compete your hardest to win, you have fun, and you love doing what you're doing, you'll stay with it. First of all, that's going to be one of the most important things. You're going to stay with it, and you're going to improve greatly, day by day, week by week, year by year, and regardless of whether you're winning or losing. So if you have the right attitude, that you love competing, you're giving your best shot, you're enjoying the whole process, the journey, not just focusing totally on the destination, but you're also enjoying the journey, the destination, and even what's beyond that destination. I heard a great story from Grandmaster Ed Parker years ago, and he talked about the types of martial artists. He goes, you have one breed that gets halfway up the mountain. They start to go, I'm going to climb to the top of that mountain. And they get halfway up the mountain. They go, man, this mountain's a big mountain. It's too big of a mountain. I'm done. They go back down the mountain. He says, get another breed. They say, I'm going to go up that mountain. They walk up the mountain. They go halfway up the mountain. They keep going. They go 3/4 way up the mountain. They go, man, this is a big mountain. I'm going to go back down. He goes, but then you have an even more rare breed. They say, I'm going to get up that mountain. They walk to the top of that. They start going halfway up the mountain, 3/4 way up the mountain. They get to the top of the mountain. They make it all the way to the top of the mountain. He said, but the rarest breed is this one. They look at that mountain. They go, I'm going to go to the top of that mountain. And they get halfway up the mountain. They get 3/4 way up the mountain. They get to the top of the mountain. And then when they get to the top of the mountain, they go, wow, look at all those other mountains left to climb. Yeah. That's the type of person we want to be in everything we do in martial arts. So you don't have that quitting attitude, right? You may conquer one mountain, you may conquer another mountain, but you just keep seeing new mountains, new challenges, and things to conquer. So that's so important, okay? So if you have that champion mindset, you're in it to win it, right? You don't go there to lose. You should never have the attitude that I'm going to lose or that I'm going there to lose. But you also know that someone has to lose and someone will win. Someone will win, someone will lose. And if you lose, you're gracious and respectful. But no matter what, that loss has to be a lesson, and it has to be motivating. It has to be a motivating force that kind of propels you to a whole new level in the future. That's really crucial. So you don't want to lose. You always train to win. You always believe you're going to win. You always go there to win. And someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. So regardless of which one of those two people you are, you're gracious, you're respectful, and you use that as a force to propel you to another level in the future or in future competitions. Another thing is you may worry at times before a match and feel a lot that you feel afraid or feel a lot of fear. Everyone feels fear before a match. Every person has a level of fear. And you actually don't want to compete without feeling some degree of fear. Okay. If you go in there without any fear, that can work against you without any fear. The point isn't to eliminate the fear completely, but the point is to manage the fear properly. And I love that concept Tony Blauer has about the weight of fear. So I was thinking this, like I picture if I had 10,000 pounds of fear in my back or 40 pounds of fear in my back. I still got fear in my back, but 40 pounds is a lot harder to manage than thousands of pounds of fear in your back. And that's the thing. When you understand these different elements that we're talking about here in this 12 Daily Dozen, you're eliminating little annoyances, little problems, little things that kind of work against you, whether it's diet, whether it's nutrition, whether it's not getting enough sleep, whether it's not getting enough rest and rehab, whether it's not having the right connection with your training partners and coach and so on and so forth. The more little annoyances, knowing where the weigh-ins are, knowing all the different things, where to sign in and check in and how to warm up. Every time you understand one of these little things, it's just a little less pressure on you, a little less weight off your back, and it's a little less pressure. So you're going to go to the competition with less stress, less problems, less annoyances, less things that are bugging you, and it's going to be a little easier to focus. And that's going to actually take away from some of the fear, some of the doubt, some of the lack of confidence that you want to have when you're go into a competition. So. I love this, and Tony Blauer says, remember that the way we move ourselves away from courage is to discourage. So if you keep allowing other people to discourage you or just saying things to discourage yourself, remember there's multiple types of conversation that affect us. What we hear from other people, what we say with our mouths, and our ears actually hear what we're saying and what we think in our minds. So you need to think the right thoughts. You need to say the right things because you hear what you say, and you need to be careful of what you're allowing other people to say. So the way we move ourselves away from courage is to discourage. And the way we move ourselves towards courage is to encourage yourself. Not we're talking about in a confident way, not in a cocky or an arrogant way, but in a confident way. You always respect your opponent. It's very important to respect your opponent. Know they're a legitimate challenge, but also believe completely that you'll win. This creates a balanced mindset, and that you don't underestimate anybody, but you also don't overestimate them. You shouldn't get psyched out. I don't care if you're facing the greatest guy on the planet, if it's Gordon Ryan or if it's whoever, you name it, Hodger Gracie, whatever the case might be, any top notch. Don't psych yourself out. Don't go out there already expecting to lose. And I'll reiterate that point we talked about from that Dan Millman saying from before. When faced with just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. When faced with just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. So you don't want to go out there and doubt yourself. You need to believe in yourself, right? What happens will happen regardless, but don't go out there doubting yourself because you're already creating a formidable opponent in front of you beyond just the physical opponent you're facing. And that other opponent is yourself, is your negative thoughts, attitudes, and emotions. So again, when faced with just one opponent and you doubt yourself, you're outnumbered. Remember that. So that's a really important aspect. This covers some of the things that we deal with in that mental and emotional game as far as competition is concerned. So we'll just a quick little thing. I'll do the second one, which is the coach connection tonight. This element really involves communicating with your coach. Just even the fact that you desire to compete. If you decide you want to compete, maybe you're ready, maybe you're not ready. A lot of times people will just go and compete and they're totally not ready. And that can be the very thing that discourages them from continuing training. And that person may well have been another future champion or some great in jiu-jitsu or MMA or boxing, kickboxing, whatever type of competitive sport they decided to compete in. But it's very important to talk to your coach and your trainer. They know they're going to have a lot of insights as to whether you're ready, how you're going to do, whether you should be doing this yet, whether you need a few more things to work on, and so on and so forth. So communicate that to the coach, just the fact that you want to compete. Get his opinion on it, get his advice, get direction from him if he thinks that you are ready as to how to prepare. So this is really important. Whether the coach is there every training session or not, be sure to keep him in the loop. What's going on? You'll get different direction, get assistance, and get advice from him as much as possible. Again, your coach, some coaches in schools have a lot of responsibilities, training with a lot of different fighters, a lot of different people. You may have other trainers and coaches in your school that you can work with. You may have a head coach or a head instructor or professor that you deal with that's the head of the school. Like I said, get him in the loop. He may coordinate you with another instructor or another training partner, so on and so forth. And even if he's not there for you all the time, or even some of the other people aren't there for you all the time, make sure you appreciate them, because unless you're someone like Conor McGregor with millions of dollars to pay people, boatloads of money to be there for you every single day and make your meals and cook your food and do this and that and, hold the mitts for you and be here at a certain time to put you through strength and conditioning, so on and so forth, you can't really expect them to be there for you all the time. A lot of these people have jobs and families and things like that, and they try to be there the best they can for you. So when they are there for you, really let them know how much you appreciate it. And obviously a team, whether they're getting paid or not, is generally going to be very supportive of the other competitors and other fighters. Try to be there for them as much as possible because they're probably training quite a lot themselves. But again, irregardless of whether they're always there for you or not, just make sure you appreciate them. And that's a little bit involving that, even though we're going to talk about the training partners and trainers later, but that whole coach connection. So tonight we'll just focus on the mental and emotional game for competition, which we talked about first. And then second part, which is that coach connection. Keep your coach involved. Get the advice, get the assistance, get the direction from him as much as possible.
I love it. I can remember a few things that in my personal experience, one about to be kind of away from the energy vampires or the people that try to kind of like bring you down. I mentioned this in other podcasts or maybe other videos. I think I mentioned in the first one, when I decided to compete in the Worlds, I was already 37 years old or 38. And I decided to compete as an adult, right? I was supposed to be Master 2, but I'm like, I'm going to, throw myself there with the big shots with the young folks. And that was back when I was here in U.S. I was teaching, but I was still, hustling, having multiple jobs, and I was helping someone cleaning houses. So first thing in the morning, first house in the morning, I'm vacuuming or doing something like that, and one of my former students calls me like, "Hey, professor, did you see your bracket?" Because they had just released the brackets. That was the week before, my fight, the competition, the worlds, and I was gonna maybe like travel the next day to California. That was back when it was still in California. Long story short, my first match was Roger Gracie, and this guy's like, "Oh, that sucks. Oh, that you're gonna go there." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, no, I will get there, and even if I was delusional, or I would still talk to myself, believing that I could win, beat Roger, right? So I'm not gonna go there thinking like, okay, first match, this guy gonna win. No. So I told him like, you know what? I'm gonna do my best. I will win. I will be in the cover of Grayson magazine, like the old guy that beats the young folk. That's a mindset I think you know anybody should go. I'm not overestimating him. I'm not underestimating him. I'm trying to, you know, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna do everything I can to fight up to the last second, no matter what. And Roger won. We fought for a good amount of minutes, and then he won. He won the worlds that day. He beat like guys that were like competing way more than me, way younger than me, and he beat I think three other guys in that weight division. And I'm not gonna accept that. I'm not gonna accept that kind of like negativity. Another thing I like to do, I always pray not to win. I pray to not get hurt before, and it is like my beliefs, right? So I pray to not get hurt. I pray to not hurt anybody by accident. But most of all, I pray to God to give me the 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 willingness to win up to the last second, to not allow my spirit to get weaker, to never doubt myself. So I do ask for that kind of blessing, not to win, but at least like to give my all, to always strengthen my soul and my body and my mind in order to fight up to the last second. And one of the routines that I have up to this day, I hope I can heal my injuries so I can go compete and master 4 or 5. I don't even know which master level, as far as age I am. But since my first competition, that was my routine to go by the podium and look at the first place, the top, and imagining myself there. I always work the visualization to strengthen my mindset, to really like, this is what I want. This is what I didn't come here to have fun, right? Because it's hard work, like you said, right? We have this. We were going to talk about the long route. So the prior to your fight, it's very stressing. We have to, like you said, watch our nutrition. You're going to develop more into the next elements in the future, but working hard, conditioning, strengthening, nutrition, and flight plans, traveling, the travel plans, all of that, and who's going to teach in your, in my place. So all those things are stressful. It's not just like fun, right? I'm not going there just to have fun or have a vacation. I'm going there. That's my mission. That's my job. And so I see that it's my mission. And like you said, and which is huge, is to win or lose with and still be humble. Be gracious when you're winning. After you win, I'm not gonna over celebrate. I will be happy, but I'm not gonna over celebrate. And if I lose, regardless if it was a referee call or the guy beat me, tapped me, I'm not gonna make a fool of myself acting like a jerk, let's say. So that is a huge thing for me. As far as the coach connection, I think this is huge because nowadays, I think at least me as a coach, I should be more, I should be tougher to not allow some students to compete when they are not ready. I've been very vocal, and unfortunately, some students really like got offended when I said like, I don't think you should compete now. But why? I really want to go to just like, and I just want to have fun. I said, no, that's first of all, it's the wrong mindset. You're not training enough. I just want to see how much I can do. The truth is, people, especially like first timers, they don't know how it feels to lose in that kind of setting. I played basketball before. I would win games. I would lose games with my team. I could blame somebody else. I would never feel like I lost that alone. But when you're competing in martial arts or any type of combat sports, you you're never alone when you're inside the mats, right? Because you have, like you said, you have your whole team behind you. Everybody that trained with you is part of your achievements, right? And even like sometimes, even in your losses, like we all losing, we all, winning together. But I always tell the guys like, pay attention to everything around you to make sure that when you compete when you're ready, and listen to your coach. Some people don't like, some people, hey, professor, I just signed up for this tournament. I'm like, well, I don't think you should, but sometimes I just say like, just go, but never go just to have fun. Just go there to win. And if you don't win, it's fine. Exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Try your best next time. And I think that's very important that young folks, young when I mean like young people, young in this world of competition, understands that. Talk, get the feedback from your teammates, get the feedback from your coach, from everybody working as an assistant coach. We have so many guys in our gym that helps the competitors. Ask them like, do you feel I'm ready? Right? Do you feel ready, first of all? And then you get the feedback, because like you said, it's a two-way road. We need to have this feedback from people. But I love this. I think these 12 elements will help so much everybody. And I think like people should stay tuned. Send your comments. If you have any questions regarding these two first elements, write your comments in YouTube, or send by email. We always put in the emails in the description so we can move on. All right, so that's great. Let's go with the reality warrior principles now. Ready? Let's go.
Just one quick thing, Professor, is I was just going to say, like, and you think even with like Roger Gracie, like your match with him, you talk about that, but like first of all, most people would consider him, especially in gi, maybe even overall, the GOAT of jiu-jitsu competition of all time. And when you still think what you went on to do later, still winning 3 Worlds Masters and winning five or six Pan Ams, or I forgot how many you won of the Pan Ams. I know. Was it 5?
Yeah, 5 and 3 second places.
So right, 5. Which is pretty impressive. I mean, very few people could even think anything close to that. So it's neat that not only did you go in with that attitude, but you kept that attitude, or you wouldn't have achieved a lot of those other things in the future. So, and that, like you said, people pushing through that, going in with that right mentality, having that right attitude, win or lose, but then you still kept pushing, you still kept striving towards getting those type of wins. So I think that says a lot, and that's a good model for people to follow.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to lead by example. I wish I could compete more, but all right. So let's get to the second segment, the reality warrior principles, because it just keeps getting better and better.
Well, last week we actually kind of by accident, based on one of the questions we received, sort of got into this, which should technically be the next principle. So maybe I'll do 2 this evening. This is kind of a quick one. The first one's kind of a quick one anyway to address. So far we talked about numerous different things. As far as the fight principles, the 4 A's, the 7 main arsenal tools, and the MAP principle, which is defensive side. This week we're going to talk about 2 different things. The first one is going to be called the ABCs of self-defense, or the appropriated battle concepts. this basically means, bring the right toolbox to the ring, bring the right toolbox to the cage, bring the right toolbox to the mats, bring the right toolbox to the battlefield or to the streets. In other words, there's certain tools that are going to be used in competition that may not be used in reality situations. There's certain tools that will be used in reality situation that won't be used in a more of a competitive type situation. And so basically, this is when we appropriate our skills and our training based on age, body type, attributes, gender, job description, whatever your objectives are, the threat level, so on and so forth, any of these number of things. And I just want to say one thing, because I know how people think. A lot of times they'll watch a show and they say, oh, he's talking about the gender. For example, when I say gender, it's not that likely that if Professor Luigi's walking down the street by himself, that a bunch of guys are going to grab him and try to pull him into a car, rape him, right? But they could start a fight with him, right? He could be walking down the street and someone's going to, maybe look at him and be like, hey, you got a problem? What are you looking at? You looking at me? You want to go? You looking at my girlfriend? That kind of a thing. They may challenge him to a fight. So that's a realistic type scenario that he could actually encounter. Probably not as much a bunch of guys trying to grab him and rape him. Now, on the flip side, if his wife is going down the street and she's as tough as nails, but it would maybe be more likely that people that don't know her might be more thinking in terms of trying to rape versus trying to pick a fight. They're not going to look at Sylvia and go, hey, you got a problem? What are you looking at? You want to fight, man? You looking at my girlfriend? It's not as likely to happen. So when I talk about the appropriating based on, in other words, you're creating scenarios that are based on the likelihood of what might happen to you based on any of those types of things. Age, body type, attributes, gender, so on and so forth. Just like a guy coming out of the gym that's 6'5", jacked, totally muscular. Most people don't just go out of the way to pick a fight with him. And not to mention, if that same guy that's 6'5", big, ripped, jacked is coming out of an MMA gym with his taking his hand wraps off, are most people going to pick a fight with him? So it's like, so there's certain scenarios that not that they couldn't happen, but are just less likely. So when we say appropriate, we appropriate the training to kind of fit the things that are most probable or likely to occur for that person, the types of scenarios they may have to deal with, and then appropriating training based on that. So again, just to make that point clear. So basically, appropriate battle concepts means appropriating your training to whatever the scenarios. If you're a police officer, here's another thing I see a lot of people do. You see police officers that might even know a lot about combatives and self-defense and things, so on and so forth, but then they may teach a course for civilians as if they're teaching law enforcement. Or you see some styles that are real military origin styles, and they teach civilians like they're teaching soldiers, when the SOP, the standard operating procedure of a civilian, is totally different than that of a soldier. So the rules of engagement, so on and so forth, everything they have to follow, or that they're the equipment they have access to, the communications limitations, so on and so forth. A lot of the times those things aren't factored in. So you have to remember that you do need to appropriate. Are we teaching civilian men, civilian women, children, law enforcement, military, so on and so forth? There's an appropriation that has to occur for the training to be right. So regardless of what we're teaching in RMA, we're always considering the person we're teaching, the people we're teaching, and making sure that the training is not just good, but it's good for them, that it's appropriate for them. That's the concept behind appropriate battle concepts. So no matter who you're teaching and no matter what you're teaching or who you're teaching, make sure you appropriate it to meet the needs of that person. Now, even in the case if I'm teaching RMA, and I love teaching reality martial arts, but I have a student who's preparing for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament, there's lots of things in RMA that they can't do in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament that are still effective, but you can't use them there. So that wouldn't make any sense. I wouldn't be giving them the appropriate type of training for that tournament if I taught them like I'm training them for the streets, for a situation involving weapons or multiple opponents, or where you can bite and eye gouge and so on and so forth. So again, it can work that way as well. It can work from sport to street, from street to sport, from, if you're teaching law enforcement, military, civilians, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind. It's a very important principle, and it's going to do a lot to make your training, with your training and your teaching of other people, any various types of martial arts, much, much better and much more effective. The second principle we're going to talk about today, I'm just going to bring it up on my screen, is the RIOT principle. RIOT stands for Realistic Ingredients of Training, RIOT, Realistic Ingredients of Training. And this involves the psychological, emotional, verbal, postural, tactical, physical, and environmental aspects, environment from the perspective of surroundings, climate, resources, and terrain. The environmental aspects of training. So what do I mean by that? So when we're trying to create reality-based, kind of scenario-based training, if we consider the psychological aspects, what's going to be going through the mind of the person being attacked, and the attacker. What kind of thoughts go through their mind? What could the scenario be psychologically, between the two of them? Psychologically, emotionally, what kind of emotions do the people go through? Verbally, what kind of dialogue occurs? Like I said, if someone's starting to fight with you and they come up and go, "What are you looking at my girlfriend? You got a problem, man? You want me to knock your teeth out?" Whatever but you add in the facial expressions and the dialogue and the posture, making it seem very realistic. And then the person goes into his de-escalation. He's using certain type of dialogue. So there's a verbal element that occurs. So we got psychological, emotional, verbal, then postural. How will the bad guy stand? Hands down by their side, getting up in your face, kind of pointing in your face. Any of these postural things, not like something that's unrealistic, like you may see in some styles where they do a low block and they come in with some, punch that no one ever would throw in a real fight. You want the postural elements and dynamic, the psychological, the emotional, the verbal, the postural, to all replicate something as it's going to really occur in reality, in a real situation. So we replicate the psychological elements, the emotional elements, the verbal elements, the postural elements. Next is the tactical elements. How does that person actually move? They're going to shove you. They're going to push you. They're not going to step back in a horse stance and reverse punch you. They're going to shove you, come in with a wild haymaker, a wild tackle or something like that. And it's going to be, a lot of times the attacks aren't technical and crisp like they would be in the ring, with good, perfect punches or perfect double leg takedowns and throws. Sometimes the attacks are very wild and erratic. So we kind of even sometimes have to replicate that side of things so that you're not only used to fighting smooth technical opponents, but you're used to also fighting erratic, wild opponents who may still be very tough. A person can be wild and can be erratic, but could have 200-300 street fights under their belt. And that can be a kind of experience in the street that can be very valuable. And they still can be a good fighter, even if they don't have that formal training, especially if they have incredible athletic attributes, a will to win, they can take a good beating, all these kind of things. And they're willing to do anything it takes to beat you as an opponent. So you got to factor those things in. Never underestimate somebody just because they don't have formal training. That's one thing I stress all the time. Yes. If you think about it, even just a big, strong, athletic guy, right? Sometimes we say, oh, size don't matter. It doesn't matter if they're big, it doesn't matter if they're strong. Look, very simple. Why did Helio Gracie and Carlson, and those guys, what was one of the original principles about why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was developed? What is it? What do they always say? To defend yourself against who?
Yeah,
the bigger, stronger opponent. For the smaller guy, smaller guy could defend themselves against a bigger, stronger opponent. Why would you develop a whole system around something if it's not important? In other words, you're developing a whole system around a smaller guy beating a bigger guy, but then saying being a bigger guy doesn't matter. Why would you develop the system? That doesn't make any sense. So obviously it makes a difference. And even some of the videos, and I say this being a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, loving Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but still you see the videos sometimes where they'll say, here's this bodybuilder fighting this black belt. And the black belt's so smooth and technical, but still sometimes they got to work pretty hard to defeat this awkward, goofy bodybuilder who hardly knows anything, but he still does okay just because he's so big and strong.
Yeah.
So we don't acknowledge it. Sometimes we're a little bit almost like it doesn't make sense how we contradict ourselves. So and not saying we do that or Professor Luigi, I'm just saying a lot of people do kind of contradict themselves. So of course it's going to make a difference if the person's bigger and stronger. So, considering all those physical dynamics. So anyway, so we consider the psychological, the emotional, the verbal, the physical. Physical is not the postural elements, but the physical is another one. So postural is how they're postured. Physical is how strong they are, how athletic they are, how fast they are. All these things matter. The tactical skill, how well they're trained, what type of style they use tactically, and environmental. So psychological, emotional, verbal, postural, physical, tactical, and environmental. Environmental, what do we mean by this? I've done numerous seminars where I've taken experienced grapplers and MMA fighters out onto the cement, into the mud, on trap rock, on angled hills, and areas where there's lots of woods and trees and branches, and it changes so much the way they fight, sometimes completely. You put them on cement, just the way you move, the way your inability to shrimp a certain way or bridge or get out of certain positions, that on a mat that's a little smoother, a little more forgiving, you're able to do that. So just changing those things makes things more realistic. So remember, Riot is more geared towards realistic training in the first place, toward RMA. So it's the realistic ingredients of training. And if I take and I make seriously consider and integrate the psychological, emotional, verbal, postural, physical, tactical, and environmental elements, again, from the perspective of climate, surroundings, resources, and terrain, together synergistically, you create a more realistic scenario in the first place. So that's why we do this. We bring all those things together. We take you off the mat, put you on the concrete. Instead of just doing the move, the guy's yelling at you, telling him he's going to kill you, telling him he's going to kill you, and trying to smash you. You're just adding the dialogue, adding the verbal, adding the posture, adding a scenario. Maybe it's a certain scenario that you've got to get them off you, and they're trying to pull your kid into a car, so you can't stay around there and roll around and take 10 minutes to work them into a position where you get a sweep and submit the person. You got to get it over with quick finish so you can get them off you and go take care and protect the person you need to protect. So that's one element of the riot principle. And then we also add what we call the MAPS rule, the integration of the MAPS rule. MAPS rule stands for motivation, ability, pressure, and stress. Motivation, ability, pressure, and stress. This works right along with the riot principle. So once we add all these things, we start to work on ways that we deal with your motivation. What is your motivation to fight? Why do you fight? What do you fight for? What would you fight for? Your ability. Now, all martial arts styles work on ability, right? They work on ability. They work on the physical skills, the punching, the kicking, the grappling, the striking. If it's a weapon style, the weapon skills, they work on the ability. And then pressure. Pressure is when we start to add a little extra, like maybe you get shoved. Maybe we work some conditioning, cardio conditioning first to get you a little more tired and a little bit more contact, to start to add a pressure. And then stress is when you take it to the next level. Maybe we have you go through some intense physical conditioning. There's dialogue, someone screaming, yelling in your face. They spin you in a circle to get you dizzy, like you got hit or knocked out. Change the environment, put you on concrete or snow or ice, add multiple opponents. So you're going from just pressure, which is a lower level of stress, really, to stress. That's just a higher level of stress. So it's a greater level of stress. So motivation, why do you fight? What will you fight? What do you fight for? Ability, the ability to actually fight. Pressure, adding some stressors, and then stress, which is adding an intense style of stress. So if we add that to the riot principle, this is it's a fairly easy way to develop realistic scenario-based training. And you just consider things. Is it an ATM? Is it a carjacking? Is it a mugging? Is it a home invasion? That you just appropriate to whatever that is, but you're integrating this riot principle all the time. And my last little thing I'll say here is, if you wanted to make a movie about like Vietnam, all right, so you would consider psychologically, what are the soldiers going to be going through? What are their adversaries, in a sense, going to be going through? Psychologically, emotionally, what do they go through, right? When you watch a movie about that and those things seem genuine or make sense or line up with what they're going through, you appreciate the moment. Go, this is realistic. Yeah. Psychological, emotional, verbally, there's a certain type of dialogue that they use in the military. And if you're in the military and you hear them using dialogue that's never used in the military, you're like, oh, this movie's ridiculous. We would never say that or never do this, right? Verbally. Posturally, there's a certain way they do maneuvers when they're doing room entry and so on and so forth. There's a certain way they'll carry the firearm. There's a certain way they're doing entry, a certain way the muzzle will be pointed and so on and so forth. There's certain ways they do things as far as the posture and way they move themselves. Tactically, there's a certain way they do that. Physically, there's a certain way they look. If you got a movie about a bunch of SEAL teams, about a SEAL team or Army Special Forces, Green Berets, A-Team, ODA, and they're doing maneuvers and they all look like, Chris Farley or something, it's not going to be as realistic as if they look like they're, well-trained, athletic, soft operators, So, and the same thing with the environment. If we had all those things realistic, but then the environment we're shooting in was like Disneyland, you like see the Magic Kingdom behind them, and you're saying this is a movie about Vietnam. You say, why is the Magic Kingdom in the back? That environment doesn't line up. But if you have them out in the jungles and it looks realistic, and you see certain things that would line up with what would actually exist in Vietnam, it's going to make more sense. So does that make sense? Yeah. So if you think of how you would make a movie realistic, that's kind of how you make scenario-based training realistic. So consider the psychological, emotional, verbal, postural, tactical, physical, and environmental aspects, bring them all together at the same time, synergistically, and then you're going to do a good job creating scenario-based training. Consider a specific scenario to integrate those principles into, and then add that motivation, why you're fighting, what you're fighting for, ability, make sure you have the ability to do those things, pressure, which is the lower level of stress, and then work your way up to stress, which is the more intense level of effect on the person or stress on the person. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We went through the ABCs of self-defense. Yeah, the riot principle, which is how you do scenario-based training, and then the MAPS rule integration into our training.
I love it. And this is a good advice especially for the jiu-jitsu coaches, that many people in a newer generation of black belts in jiu-jitsu, they lost a lot of the reality when it comes to self-defense. Some guys, even like some old guys, it still show like some things that I don't they might not like when I say this, but it's absolutely not realistic. Like showing just like some big dude grabbing this girl by the hair, and she just like, I don't know, she does this move and throws the guy and finish with the armbar. I'm like, realistically, can somebody really do that to somebody? Like you said, it could be a kid that is super strong
Right.
and play football or wrestling in high school, and that will be that person will be a problem right off the bat. So when I tell the jiu-jitsu guys, like, you
Right.
guys have to really incorporate those realistic components. Even like, okay, let's do shrimping or hipscapes. Do here on the mat, do now on the concrete, and do now on a pavement, and do on the grass, and do on the gravel. See how you will have to change, how you will have to change your technical stand up, how you will you're not going to be able to do some scapes from even like pinning positions and all of that. So it's a great advice, and I think like every jiu-jitsu guy, just be honest. This is and this is the same thing applies to karate
Yeah.
guys, kempo guys, kickboxing guys, taekwondo guys. Just be realistic. Like, don't hide your weakness from trying to find excuses. What we do is, if you feel like you're deficient in some area, don't stick to what you're good at. So maybe it's like sports jiu-jitsu. Stick to sports jiu-jitsu, or maybe teach those self-defense moves for kids, because it's still very important. Anti-bullying, right? We're not going to go for lethal force when we're teaching
Right.
kids. We're going to teach kids is like de-escalation, body
Right.
posture. Somebody now hits you, how you cover, get closer, toss the kid, and control the threat or the situation. So I think just my advice for all the BJJ black belts and any black belts is just be realistic, and that's okay to have weaknesses. It's very okay, in my opinion. It's like, okay, it's all part of the process. My weakness before, I think, was integrating. So, for instance, like firearms training in my knowledge. So that's something that I've been working hard on. It. Same thing is like as far as blade work, as far as like sharpening my striking. So I'm going to spend more time training with Greg Davis, even though like I trained a lot back then. Master Greg Davis is going to help me out. He's going to be soon here. So I know my weaknesses. I know what I have to work on. I know that I cannot maybe do mostly freestyle wrestling anymore, but I still can do a lot more of let's say Greco-Roman, And one more thing. So I just had a little glitch here, but one little thing which is very interesting. I'm just going to share this. So I train firearms a lot with Bill Rapier. I always mention him because I think that anybody, if you have a chance to train with him, MTAC shooting, you should. And I'm not going to give away the training, but there's a force on force course that he offers, and it's pretty cool because he has this code board drill, like first thing you do, first thing in the morning, and but long. I'm gonna try to not give away, but he makes us think in a scenario or think about somebody that we love very much. So we close our eyes, we visualize this person, and then we do the rest of the training. I'm not gonna give away what we do, but the point is, it's a great emotional pressure because I'm thinking about my daughters. I'm thinking about it could be my mom. Just like rehearsing sometimes this thought process of thinking about somebody you really love, and you're thinking about this person is in this situation, and that changes a lot. That alone changes a lot. So great. I love the reality warrior principle. So we have two questions that I'd like to address very quick. Two great friends. I'm gonna read here. Let me just open my phone. So first one, this is a good friend. I know him, and he has actually he has a channel. I'm gonna put a link here to his YouTube channel. He's a long-time martial artist. I don't know exactly if he has any expertise in firearms or blades, but here's the question. Well, quote, I have a question. Disabled now, so obviously things are different. But my question is, if you're armed and you are walking into a scary area, maybe not so public, do you discreetly ready your weapon? I can see that being wise in the wild, but how about, say, a dark alley? I'm sure he's saying, I'm sure it's crazy illegal, but I wonder how it would be. And so that's his question. And let me give it just quick background. He's an amazing dude. He got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So of course he's dealing with the effects of multiple sclerosis. He is, trying different treatments and etc. So of course his mobility um, have changed, his ability to say protect himself. Of course, like there's some comment and reply within our first YouTube video, somebody saying like, why would you go in the dark alley in the first place? Well, that's not the case, right? Of course, when we talk about, if we go back to our first episode, we talk about the 4 A's. Yeah, ideally, I want to avert that situation. I don't want to go into, have to walk through a dark alley, but forget about, let's just like, because people get crazy, like, what, just don't go there. I mean, okay, so that, if we just take that approach, I cannot really answer the question, right? So let's forget about the scenario why
Right.
our friend found himself cutting through a dark alley, and let's like try to answer. What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, with regards to the person that commented and did say that, why are you in the dark alley? We also want to, in a sense, honor that, because obviously we shouldn't do that if we can. So the guy, he wasn't wrong in saying that, but at the same time, like you said,
Yeah.
you can't answer the question without addressing it as if he did. So maybe you look at a scenario where there was just, for whatever reason, you had to do that. Maybe it's where your car happened to break down, and you were just stuck in that area. Whatever, for whatever reason, you had to pick someone up, not down in that area that you care about, or where you got lost, whatever, any number of reasons. So we've all been in those kind of situations. We wouldn't have preferred to be there, but it just happens to be where you ended up. So that could be the case. As far as saying readying your weapon, I would go from the perspective, we should always be ready, right? We should always be able to access and deploy a weapon that we carry for the purpose of self-defense quickly and efficiently. Anyway, obviously, I wouldn't think you want to have it readied in a sense that it's going to look obvious. It's going to look to someone like maybe you're the threat walking down the street yourself, but just the same. That you're aware of, the proximity between you and other people. If you're going up there, maybe you heighten your awareness if you're coming up to a place where people could jump out. If it's a tight space, if you've got more space between you and other things or other people, maybe you're still at a higher level of awareness, maybe given the area, but at the same time, you're not going to maybe be as in tune to the firearm to the point where you're ready to just bring it out and put it into put it into play, whatever, super fast. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, I think as far as the awareness thing is, like, you just always be ready. You should always be at a level of awareness and readiness mentally, tactically. You should have your firearm carrying in such a way. And I can't say, I'm very careful how I answer this question, because there's a legal side to it, right?
Yeah.
So there's sort of a legal element to it, to way maybe we do things tactically, and you don't want to kind of like,
Brandish.
you don't want to be overly transparent when you have to consider certain a legal side of things. So I'm going to be a little cautious how I answer this, and say that it's always good to be aware. It's always good to be ready for a threat, right? There's certain things that kind of cue you into maybe being at a higher level of awareness. I mean, obviously there's situations where if you're in your house at night and you heard boom, boom, you heard someone talking or something, you're not just going to keep your gun in the drawer and go walking around the house and say, oh, that's, I don't want to have it on me, because that would be too ready. I would be, so you obviously would ready your weapon. You would have it, and where it's ready to be used. And I don't think that really would change much if you were in another situation or place where there was a reason for you to have your awareness heightened. Right now, Professor, do you have your firearm in your hand?
No.
You don't have your firearm in your hand, do you?
No.
I don't have mine, but I could have it in my hand pretty quick. But if I heard like a bang on the door all of a sudden, and so the door coming open, I could access it and ready it. So it depends on whatever the cue is, an audible cue or a visual cue, or just something like you get that intuitive radar, that gut feeling, and something just, you really know something's wrong. You can see the way someone's talking, what they're doing, the way they're coming toward your house or car or toward you. So I think there's obvious levels of awareness, and you can have your farm right next to you right now, right on you right now, and be able to put into action really quickly. But at the same time, there is still a varying level there, right? It doesn't matter if you're a Navy SEAL, if you're a Green Beret, they're not always walking around with their firearm. Bill Rapier might have a firearm in his hand right now, and he might not. Mike Cotone might have a firearm in his hand right now, and he might not. I don't know. There may not be a good reason for him to have it in his hand right now, but there could be certain things to cue him off to the point where he's like, okay, now I need to ready it that way. If what he means by readying, obviously different people can have, depending on their level of training in martial arts, different ways of defining readying the weapon. You know what I mean? What does that mean? Does it mean just having something around in the chamber? Does it mean having it in your hand and bringing it to move as if you're moving toward a target? It depends on what they mean by that. Because not everybody uses the same terminology as military or law enforcement, or may not mean the same thing even when they say that too. So that's another thing we have to take into consideration. But to me, always you always want to be aware, always be alert, always be ready. We call that the 24/7 warrior mindset. That means you're ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You're right. But obviously there are things that cue you or kind of kick you into a little bit more of a elevated level of awareness and a readiness. It's funny, last week it was interesting with you talked last week about the war acronym that someone had was it Atienza or am I saying that right?
The readiness, the
readiness
formula, that's the SIAC, from the SIAC group. Yeah.
What was that? What was that again?
So it's awareness, preparedness, and willingness. Awareness, willingness, preparedness. But awareness is number one, right? So awareness.
Okay, because we have.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's funny because we have two ways we use war. We have two ways that we use war in the RMA program. One is war as willing, able, and ready. Right. So you have to be willing to fight. Right. Know that you could inflict damage on somebody, hurt, injure, damage, kill somebody. Willing to fight, able to fight. I'm able. I've got the skill, the ability, to fight, and ready. And what I like about the word ready versus even over awareness or alertness is ready implies awareness. Right. So if you're just ready, if you're going down the street in a bad area and I'm ready, it implies that I'm ready in the sense that I've got the skills and the training. I'm ready in the sense that I have the awareness and the alertness. I'm ready in the sense that the weapon is as ready as it needs to be, given the situation that I'm in. Right. So my point being is if you take a group of SOF operators, special operation forces operators, SOF operators, and they're going into a building or they're going into a situation, not at every turn do they always have their firearms in their hands. Not that they always, in other words, there's sometimes when it's slung, sometimes when they start to, bring it into a position where they may be able to use it if they're doing a room entry, but not there may be in the vehicle, driving the vehicle. He's not driving the vehicle with the firearm in his hands. You see what I'm saying? But there could be something that causes them to stop the vehicle and ready the weapon on the target and start to use it. Right. So in other words, so your level, they're still ready, but they're maybe not putting the weapon into use at that point. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. So in other words, if I know I'm willing to fight and I'm able to fight, I have the ability to fight, then I just need to be ready to fight. And that level, whatever ready means, can vary from situation to situation and time to time, depending where I am in the conflict. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I do not, of course, like if anybody listening to the podcast or watching, if you have any questions about any legality of, when it comes to self-defense, self-protection, you should, talk to a lawyer. We are not lawyers, so this is not a legal advice. So I would say, as some, Yeah, so as someone that teaches legal use of force courses, and I offer pistol permit classes, so I have to mention some of these things. My suggestion, like you said, my suggestion is to have your own system. We all have our own systems, and we have to test the systems, like see how efficient. So what kind of weapon or equalizer based on your disability or based on your size and, age and etc., what kind of weapon system you will have to integrate into your everyday, how you carry stuff. So for instance, if you carry a firearm, do you carry on yourself, or like so many women carrying a purse? Like how ready can you be if to draw the firearm from inside your purse? So that's something that I always tell special women, like have your weapon, your firearm on you, and have, well, what kind of a holster do you have? Do you have a fast holster, or do you have a holster that has some whatever retention that you don't train as much as? Or if you carry a knife, do you carry a pocket folding knife that has some weird mechanism that can fail, or do you carry a fixed blade that you can just like draw very quick? What kind of garments? Maybe like if it's in winter and I'm have a couple jackets on the garment, maybe it's the way for me to not show what I have, but I am say unbuckling or opening my jacket in a way that I can have access to whatever I carry on my appendix. Do you carry appendix? Do you carry 3 o'clock or forward of three? Some people like to carry behind their back. How fast can you do? So I think that's some way to think about being ready without showing brandishing, because definitely it's illegal. You cannot brandish a firearm. You cannot walk around with a firearm. And actually, it's even not tactically, I think, a good idea. Another thing we can talk about in the future episodes, and we have mentioned about that, like when you're there walking in the alley, like walk with a purpose, like walk like you going somewhere really, like you determined. So if you can speed up your pace, you do it, because that can help, of course, to not look like you, not make yourself look like an easy target. I always mention this biologist Robert Sapolsky. He has different views when it comes to Second Amendment, and maybe he has a little romantic view when it comes to firearms, like as if it's something that we could eradicate from society, which we can't. Of course, we cannot. But for instance, he has in one of his books, he mentions that predators prey on the most identifiable, not always like on the weakest. Like it could be me, like a strong dude walking, not strong, I'll say that I'm strong, but say a tall, heavy guy walking a dark alley, but I'm totally oblivious and looking down on my phone. I'm losing my peripheral vision, and somebody like sees that I'm totally unaware, and then attacks me from behind, gets a club and hit my head. So and it's just I could be. Otherwise, I could look like somebody that knows something because I have cauliflower ears a little bit or something like that, or because I'm 6'3" tall and 245 pounds. So maybe otherwise, I think, like you said, I'm not the typical target. But if I'm oblivious to what is around, of course, I'm going to be an easy target. So those are things to take in consideration. Well, let's go to the second one. I think the second one, the answer is pretty quick, even though it's a very, very scary situation. And this is one of our students that went through this, and I'm quoting him. Situation, defense scenario just occurred. Not sure if I made the right call. Gotten my car in a parking lot in a town. Otherwise consider safe. I'm gonna just put it here because I just don't want to give away who it is, but because I don't know if he wants to keep anonymous. Anyway, so and a truck pulls into a parking lot with one door open. Woman is clearly trying to get out of the truck. Guy gets out, runs around and slam the door on her. Runs around and get back in truck. She jumps out and starts running, and he gets out and chases her and grabs her bag, pulls her, and looks like he's about to start swinging. I start to get out of my car when another guy with a hand on a knife in his pants, very big guy, runs up yelling, pulls the knife out. First guy jumps back in the truck and peels out of the parking lot. So just summarize here so people understand, like the person that witnessed this, he was unarmed. So he didn't have a blade or a firearm on him. And so my first suggestion, I'm just going to go over my first suggestion to him and to anybody, I would say is keep your eyes on, what is happening. get the license plate, description of the people if you can, in the description of the vehicle. Call 911 immediately and stay on the line with 911, describing what's happening. Try to be calm, try to be clear. And then I would say, like, it seems that I am witnessing a kidnapping situation. Here are the details of the car. I'm in this area. And if safe, what I would do is keep a good distance. And if as the car moves away, I would stay in the line with 911 at a very safe distance. I wouldn't make myself like identifiable, trackable. And I would follow at least as much as I could, as long as it's safe, to at least like tell 911 where they are turning, if they're cutting corners, what kind of streets, like, what the name of the streets. And it seems that he had maybe his wife with him, but if you have somebody next to you, ask the person, be the leader, like, tell me the name of the streets. I'm going to keep my eyes, keep like a 2 cars distance, 3 cars distance sometimes could help. But that would be my suggestion for somebody unarmed witnessing this type of situation. Look, violence is going up in this country. And if you're in a blue state, in a blue city, this is not political, this is obvious. Violence is increasing due to, and now this is my pitch, right? Due to all these prison reforms, the bail reforms, all of that has been allowing or empowering criminals to engage in those acts on broad daylight, right? They don't care. Broad daylight, what they're doing is they kidnapping people, carjacking, attacking, and it all result of the policies mostly in blue states. Those are facts. It's not just because I'm not saying that I'm Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, nothing like that. I'm not going to even tell you how I vote. But my point is, look at the patterns, look in the numbers so you can see. So if you know those areas, that's part of the awareness too, the redness, like you said. Be aware of what kind of crime is increasing in your area so you can be prepared for, right? So that's my opinion. What do you think?
Professor, yeah, you pretty much said what I would have said. So I mean, it's pretty much right to the T. I got the look at the question earlier, the comment at least that he had sent to us, and pretty much would have said the same thing. A couple of things to keep in mind. Unless you are a police officer, remember that you're not a police officer. So it's very simple. That's one thing. So there's a reason that police are called police, because that's their job, is to police, to protect and to serve. If you're not a police officer, that's not really your job. You're not. And there's a lot. I've also known situations where people have gotten situations like that too, involving a male and a female. And even if the guy was being abusive, and the next thing you know, he's laying out the guy that's doing it, he's attacking him, taking him down, dealing with him. And then the person that the guy was beating on starts attacking that person that was defending the person that was getting beat on, and ripping their eyes and gouging. And then you got 2 people on you, even though you were trying to protect the person that was getting beat on. So you really never know how people are going to respond in those situations. Not to say that obviously in this situation, I'm sure the person was probably legitimately just a victim, and who knows what could have been happening. But you have to remember that if you're not a police officer, it's that simple. You're not a police officer. That's not your job. And getting yourself involved with certain things like that, physically, or especially in the situation where you're saying where the person wasn't even armed either. And obviously we don't want to even get into what that entails legally as well. So there's a lot that would be involved there. And again, I always reiterate, I'm very careful with answering questions like this because of the legal ramifications that could be involved, legal, moral, that's something I always want to talk to a lawyer, ask them, get all the insights. If you're going to talk about dealing with a situation like we're talking about tonight, don't take our word for it. We're giving you some opinions, some ideas of how we might handle it, but we're not saying it's a legally perfect information, just some of our thoughts and ideas about how we might handle things. Not even that's 100%, but I think a lot of what Professor Luigi said was good information. Obviously, first and foremost, contact 911. That's their job. Get the best possible identification of the vehicle, of the people involved, get the license plates. Make sure you get good descriptions of everything, and any way you could tell them where they're going, what they said, any of that, do it in a calm, clear manner, where the events taking place or took place, whatever the case might be. All those things are going to be very helpful. if possible, maybe if it's possible, you can get something on video. You could get your phone recording. Your phone can, and nowadays a telephone or a camera can be as effective in a weapon a lot of times in solving cases or crimes than 10 times more than even a firearm can be in a lot of cases. So those are just a couple ideas that I would have. But interesting, good question, and sorry that person had to deal with that situation. Not a fun thing to have to see or do. And if you have a good heart and you're a kind person, like there's part of me that would love to just say, hey, look, you want to help everybody in those situations, but it's nowadays we live in a very everything's like it's I really call what do you call it, sujitsu. Everybody's like, what's that?
It's really hard. It's a really hard situation because. Even in states,
there's so much legality, and if you
go ahead,
I tell people, I go, look, jujitsu is effective, but you got to watch out for sujitsu too. So so you got to be really smart exactly how you say things, what you do, what you don't do. Really be careful,
one thing that I've been considering is to get a dash cam for my car. I've seen that can be helpful because if you have a dash cam in your car, that thing is going to be recording the whole time, and then maybe you can supply that video if you ever see something like that. Yeah. Another thing is, like, even in states that we have the Good Samaritan laws, which means that you could maybe intervene to help, and in some cases, but again, consult a lawyer. Problem is, if you're in a state that is ideologically following some lines of thinking or schools of thought that citizens should not defend themselves or intervene, even though we have a Good Samaritan laws, DAs might say, because if you end up like say hurting the criminal or something like that, or stopping the threat, whatever this means, right, that could be turned against you, saying like, yeah, that wasn't your job. Yeah, there's a Good Samaritan law, but if you had stayed away, nobody would be injured or something like that. So again, unfortunately, we're going towards a world where they really want the state to do everything, and they want us, even though we have the rights to do it, they're going to do everything to create implications. So just be careful, consult a lawyer.
Even with the Good Samaritan law too, you got to think too. It's like, I mean, police officers who do this every day, they're out there apprehending people, arresting people, dealing with people, and the stuff that they've got to deal with on a regular basis legally. And I'm not talking about situations where maybe an officer does do something wrong that they shouldn't do, because those situations do happen. I'm very pro law enforcement, but they're not always in the right. They're not always doing everything perfectly, but a majority of the time, most of the officers out there are trying to do the right thing the right way and care for, and they got into the line of work because they care about people, want to help people. So let's say even the ones that are doing it the right way and everything by the book perfectly, a lot of times even they have to deal with some horrendous legal situations sometimes, even when they handled everything perfectly, just because someone lies or maybe the video wasn't caught from the right angle or whatever the case might be. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of situations that may get worked out later when other evidence appears. But if they've got to deal with it, then how much more is the person that's just a civilian with the right motives and the right heart that's trying to do the right thing based on that Good Samaritan dynamic, going to maybe do the wrong thing and be put in a really bad situation for a really long time, maybe lose their firearms. And that's the thing I want to say with regards to the other question involving the firearm. I mean, there's so many situations where things we can do where we're actually in the right and then wind up losing our firearms. And then maybe, being in those situations, being ready in those situations doesn't also involve a firearm. Maybe it means carrying another type of weapon, or maybe it means being aware of your environmental weapons. So I just want to connect that back to something you said earlier, that not always do you have a firearm. That when you're on an airplane or an airport, you don't have a firearm. There's lots of scenarios where you may or may not have that, and or if you are in a situation where you're in an altercation that involved your firearm and maybe you were in the right, but they're dealing with the situation for that time, you lose your firearms and not have them for a good period of time. So you better have other means of being able to protect and defend yourself if someone attacks you in the interim, during that process. So even with the Good Samaritan, I mean, I love the idea of being able to protect people and help anybody that needs my help but just the way things are nowadays, you got to be thinking not just to protect yourself, but that you want to be there for your wife, for your kids, for your family, for your loved ones. You don't want anybody to just be able to, just because you make one rash, one quick decision, that you lose all that too. And how does that affect your kids? So even if you try to protect that one person, not even knowing what the actual scenario is, and maybe that they're going to, maybe even try to attack you too as you're trying to defend them from this person, but then you wind up in jail. You're not with your kids, not with your family, not with your loved ones, lose your business, all these other things that can unfold real quickly, if you make the wrong decision, or act too hastily. So just it's a lot for us to think of, take in consideration.
All right. So let's see. Do we have time for quick preparedness principles?
What do you think, Professor? I would try to do it I'll try to squeeze it into 10 minutes or less. What do you think?
Let's try to do it, right? Let's get like one simple thing, one quick preparedness principle, because people are having a good time with that.
Okay, cool. So my real focus this week with regards to everything going on in the world, all the craziness that's happening in the world, just way too many things happening all at once in the world right now for anybody that wants to be a prepper or is starting to prep to be apathetic, right? So in other words, so my focus this week is prepper, don't wait. Just don't wait. Get started. Start doing something. You need to get serious. You need to invest in being prepared. Analyze your common routine, right? So when I say analyze your common routine, I mean, like, what did you do today? What do you do today on an essential day-to-day basis, right? You were probably in a shelter today, right? We talked about this before, right? So you probably had some kind of liquids or food or water today, right? You drank water today. You probably had food today, and you had to have that food. You had to cook that food. It involved various heat and utensils and pans, and pots and pans to cook the food. The food was stored somewhere. You had to have access. How did you procure that food? How did you get that food? You probably slept last night. You probably entertain yourself at some point during the day, whether it be through reading a book or exercising or, and the internet, playing board games, working out, exercise, any of these things that you may do to sort of entertain yourself. You had to probably go to the bathroom, right? You probably go to the bathroom every day. If you're not going to the bathroom every day, that's a bad thing. You better go get that checked out. But what's involved with, going to the bathroom? You need toilet paper, you need a flushable toilet, or another option, right? Place to go and a way to dispose of that in a sanitary way, right? You need medical wellness. Maybe there's prescriptions you have, certain health issues that you have. You need there's the personal protection. Make sure, are you always sure that you'll be able to be protected, both armed and unarmed, and trained properly for reality, for various types of situations that are probable. Security of preps. I want to stress that security of preps and preppers. What do I mean by that? You have certain items that you've prepped, you've stored, that are prepared for certain situations that could occur. But you also, and then there's the preppers in the house. That's you, your family, your loved ones that may be involved with doing that prepping. You need to have a security, not just personal protection, which is protecting yourself, but protecting your preps, protecting your property, your home, wherever your preps are stored, so someone can't just go in and steal them. You probably showered or bathed today, right? There's the body hygiene, you wash your hair, you showered, you brush your teeth, things like this that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Clothing, you have to have basic, your clothing that you want clean, well-kept, comfortable, functional clothing as a prepper. And then tools and power sources, tools that you may use to repair things, build things, maintain things, or power sources that you use to power things, right? So these sound like simple things, but what I'm doing is just having you analyze your daily routine. What are the essential things that you have? You went to the bathroom, you ate, you drank, you slept, you bathed, you went to the bathroom, so all these different things that we do on a day-to-day basis. You need to make sure that these things are things you're going to be able to provide for yourself, whether we have power, whether you have electricity, whether there's a natural disaster, whether you have to bug out, whether you're in your vehicle. So you're thinking of all these things on a daily basis, like, that these are the essentials. This is a simple way for us to determine what are the essentials. What are the essentials? As there's a lot of things you may like to have, but there's only a handful of things you need to have. You need to sleep. You need to have shelter. You need to have water and food. You need to be able, very important to be able to bathe and clean yourself and maintain hygiene, even if it's not showering and bathing, as some way of keeping yourself clean and keeping your hygiene right. So all this, so the simplest things are cooking, eating, drinking, bathing, going to bathroom, sleeping, shelter. These things you need on a day-to-day basis, or you're not going to make it. And your medical, your physical wellness and health and things like this. Keep these things and take these things in consideration on a day-to-day basis. I need to have options for those things, both in my home, mobile if I'm my vehicle, maybe if you have a bug out location, if you're thrust into a situation where you don't have access to any of your normal supplies, but there's no high tech, low tech, and you're maybe in a no tech. Do you have ways that you can sort of produce those options for yourself? When we analyze the various situations going on nowadays, and we got riots and pandemics and droughts and food shortages, financial crisis, concerns about recession, nuclear attacks, home invasions, carjackings, muggings at the gas pump happen all the time. There was just one that was caught on video, and the guy barely got away. And then within a short time after, the same people, there were 16 more like it right within the next several hours right after that one happened. Could be that you get lost in the wilderness. Could be you have just something simple like a flat tire. Could be war. Like right now, look what we're dealing. We talked about this last week with Russia and Ukraine, and all these other things happen all around the world. These threats are very real. And so on and so forth. So here's what I want you to do. Analyze your life, first of all. Analyze your life. Then analyze life itself. What do people do on a regular basis? This is part of being a prepper. It's like, what do you need to survive? Prepare for life. Then start with the probable. Start with the things that are probable to happen, and then move towards the things that are possible, and so on. And then move forward beyond that, okay? Have that attitude of like Tony Robbins uses a term called CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. Constant and never-ending improvement. That's how you should be. It's a constant, never-ending improvement. You always ask those three questions. Analyze yourself. What's good? What's bad? What's missing? About my preps, what's good? What's bad? What's missing? If I was in a bad situation, what's good? If there's a natural disaster, flood, or earthquake, or whatever the case may be, what's good about how I'm prepared? What's bad about how I'm prepared? What's missing? We're going to get more into mindset in the next couple of weeks, because there's a lot of things when it comes to mindset people don't take into consideration, and I want to delve into that more. But first, start studying personally what you believe are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to preparedness. Develop skills that are high-tech skills. In other words, if you have the luxury of high-tech, great, use them. Low-tech skills, these are like, there's some level of technology to them, but they're a lower level. And then no-tech skills, like we talked about last week as well. Again, no-tech skills means if you have nothing available, none of your high-tech or low-tech supplies or options, but you're still able to make something happen that allows you to survive. And again, there's a difference between surviving and thriving. You may like the idea of being at home thriving, but you may just be blessed enough just to survive, just to get by and make it day to day. What do you need just to survive and make it by day to day? That's the first thing. When I talked about things like entertainment, you're like, what does entertainment have to do with it? When you're in a situation where you're maybe in lockdown, you're stuck in a cellar, you can't leave for a while. Maybe there was just example like a nuclear attack, and you had to put yourself in an isolated area. There's lots of things that could be going on in your mind that could just drive you bonkers. And having like a deck of cards, having a board game, having something simple like that, a way to be able to pass the time creatively, could mean everything, because we're not taking the psychological ramifications of you, or even being stuck in a room or a place with somebody, and you think you like them and they're great people, but after a while they get these little habits, these little things that they do, the sounds they make, or this, that, or the other thing, that just get on your nerves. And before you know it, you're ready to take the person out, and you maybe love them when it started. So little things like that just can kind of, or even keeping the kids preoccupied. If there's kids involved, maybe you have kids, you want to keep, so things like that we wouldn't think of, like a board game or deck of cards or anything like that being an important prepper supply. But those are all things, and I have a number of those things myself, taking those things into consideration. Books, games, things like that. We don't normally think of that, but keeping your mind so you're getting rid of the boredom and just getting cabin fever, getting a little crazy. Having those things in place are important. So just on a day-to-day basis, what do? You have shelter, you have food, you have water, you go to bathroom, there's a level of hygiene. There's things you do to kind of entertain yourself and keep yourself sane. There's certain primary things that occur medically. You make sure you're well and you're okay, and those around you love are well and okay. That's really important. Okay, so what I'm stressing right now is, as for you as the person watching, if you're new to prepping or if you're considering prepping, Start with those things. Start with your essentials, the things it takes just to survive, and then develop that mental toughness that go that, look, it's going to stink. It's going to suck sometimes not having all the luxuries, all the thriving things, the things that allow me to thrive that I like to have, and only having what I can just survive with. But convincing yourself, talking to yourself that you are mentally tough enough to deal with that and to suck it up, and then start doing things occasionally to challenge yourself. Maybe sleep on a floor once in a while. Maybe sleep a little outside in the cold or in a colder type of environment once in a while. Make yourself a little uncomfortable. That's the thing, is a lot of times in this American culture, people aren't used to being uncomfortable. They're just too used to being comfortable. And so that's all I'm going to stress this week. You remember that there's a saying that says, don't say I didn't warn you. So I'm going to say, don't say I didn't warn you. Prepper, don't wait. Get ready, get started, get prepped. We're going to be doing a lot more about this in the future. But that's really what was put on my heart this week, is just to stress that get the essentials to survive. If later you can thrive, that's fine, but get the essentials to survive. Realize it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some mental toughness and mental strength involved with doing that. You may have to do some things to start to build some of those muscles, because you may have the muscles to lift weights and the muscle to grapple and strike with somebody, but you may not be comfortable with sleeping out, in a wet area or a muddy area or something like that, or a lean-to or something. And you don't have to do it all the time, but expose yourself to these type of things occasionally. Sleep in your car for the night or something, just something that makes you realize that maybe you're not as tough as you think you are, even if you can outbox somebody or kickbox somebody or grapple somebody, or if you're really good with a firearm. There's a certain level and type of mental toughness, a certain type of toughness that's involved with being a good survivor. And this just I hope this gets you thinking in the right direction. And I appreciate one comment. There was a gentleman named Nate that talked about what our preparedness channel. He said he's seen thousands of other videos on preparedness, and he really liked how we were approaching this. And it's probably because we're first and foremost we're setting the foundation on this first, before all this stuff, all the hardware, that Professor Luigi was talking about before. We're getting you thinking right here first, and then we will have videos on how do you do this and how do you do this, and here's some techniques and so on and so forth. It's not like we're not going to deal with that stuff or talk about that type of stuff, but we're making sure that you have the foundation first, which is the right mindset. So that's it this week. So don't wait, get ready.
Fantastic. I love it. Look, I'm thinking about, I need to take more cold showers, cold bath. That's something that, I think I need to work on myself. Another thing is, I'm planning to do more camping with the wife, just so going with the minimum kind of stuff. So we, sleep on the ground, just a little padding, maybe if I have the luxury. So there's some really good training that we can do. And it's still sort of have fun, but without, like you said, the comfort, without all the amenities, without, the hot shower and kind of things like that. But that's a great start. I'm loving this, and I can't wait to see what's coming. Guys, please, if you like what we're doing this for you guys and for our community, for any community out there. Please don't forget to share, subscribe, like, send your comments, especially when it comes to the questions that we answered. If you have any questions regarding preparedness, I think a lot of people will have. I started having some directly sent to me as far as how to start, but you already actually answer good ways. Just have the essentials. Look what you need every day, and then work on those things. So please share, subscribe, like, send your comments, and hit the notifications button. Thanks so much. I see you guys next week. Shihan, thanks so much. God bless. And thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.